Hey kids, welcome to Stylus Rumble Animation Time thing. Today I'm gonna do a little bit more on this basic animation stuff. So here I have Ball, which I've taken great care to design for you guys. And I'm just gonna have Blue pick up the ball. So this is your standard heavy object pickup animation, which everyone should recognize if you're trying to learn animation at all. So if I move this ball around, you can see that some of the blue is behind here and some is in front, but that's not really a huge deal. That's just the way it was rigged, because we're not going to leave the ball out here. We are going to name the ball. We're not monsters. We're going to copy it and deactivate it, because if we mess it up, we want to have a copy that's safe. So we're going to use our paste special to create a new version of that ball. And then we're going to have that here connected to the hand. So obviously we don't want this connected to the hand when we start. So we have a choice of either using our ball out here or creating a third ball. I'll just use this one because I'm fairly confident if I mess up the ball, I can rebuild it. But now we have a ball that can move with the hand, and we have a ball that is independent. So it can just sit there on the floor. So let's take this guy, put him around here, and then we'll adjust the leveling to where we want it. So we want it to be in front of the chest, but behind this arm. That's easy enough to do. Our left arm here is labeled. We can sneak it in here between the arm and the other arm. They share a composite, so we can sneak it in between those and keep them a little bit separate. But I've chose to do the front arm because if we're moving it, that's the hand you're going to see, and you want it planted really well. The back hand can slide around a little bit. It has more forgiveness, so we're going to just connect that there. So there are various ways, as I went over my prop episode, that we can turn this on and off. Transparency is one simple way. Here, you could use an image switch, or, I mean, you could just animate it out of the scene too. Maybe I'll do that. Next up, we got to get this guy down to where that ball is. Let's think about what we want to do. We can have him bend over this way. So he's bending over quite a bit and getting some arc in his back. Or we could have more of the lift with your legs scenario where he frogs down and picks it up that way. So let's have him bend over first. And of course, we just have to keep that ball out of the scene. And then similar to our jump video, we can animate our legs backwards to get them doing what we need to do. We've cut out it, is that a word? We've pushed our guy in a cutout way as far as we can get him towards where we need to go. So his butt is going to need drawing substitution. I should be careful about saying that word because my how to animate butts tutorial video got demonetized. I guess I said that word too many times. I may have offended somebody's animated sensibilities. So yeah, we just want to get a nice roundy, sensible looking shape down here. So depending on how finicky you are being, you can go in and create a much better perspective on this shirt here. And if you're using an envelope deformer, which is very common, then it'd be simple to go in and correct the actual perspective of that there. But I think far more important than that would be to get these shoulders coming around, facing the ball, and not just, you know, that Barbie doll rotation. And make sure we don't have a tangent here. This is all lining up very close on top of one another, and get the perspective on the collar. So just any little pieces that you have available, if you have the time, like by all means go in and correct things drawing wise. Yeah, I'm gonna change this shirt. I'm just not getting what I want out of it. That's okay. Once we create a new drawing substitution, it's going to turn off our deformer. So if you wanted to use that deformer with the drawing substitution, you could come in here to our torso deformer transformation switch, and you could add whatever this drawing number is here. So this is drawing substitution 5. You could just type the number 5 separated by semicolons in your transform switch inside your chest deformer group, and that'll allow you to use this drawing as well. But I think I'm just going to do a substitution that I think looks nice. This is one of the instances where an envelope deformer is more useful than just the single column deformer that I use. But I feel like more often than not, they're unnecessary, and you just, things happen so much faster with the single deformer, just like the single curve chain. So that's my personal preference, but either one is right. I know lots of, in studios, often they use the envelope deformer because when these don't, like this sort of a pose, you can't just use that single one. But I feel like it's so easy to just add a deformer. if you needed to do something complex like that afterwards. I don't think it's worth the load on the computer to add it in for the occasional use. So this looks a little bit better. Now the overlay here is usually cut by that shoulder. I just kind of shove the shoulder out of the way. You could always just throw another sub in here. I'm really not shy about adding substitutions when I think that they'll look better. And I don't think animators should be afraid to throw in lots of substitutions. They're not going to break anything. If you are using action templates or something, you can add drawing substitutions and they're not going to break your action templates. So many other things will break your action templates before this will. Because they will break. Doop. Doop. Alright, so here we go. We've got him picking up the thing. And now we're going to switch to this ball. Bloop. There we can go. We can line it up as close as we can get it. We're just going to hide it, and we're just going to shove that out of the way. Boop. So now it's switching from one ball to the other ball. You could even, instead of shoving it out of the way, I mean, you could just turn off the exposure for this guy as well. Turn this one off. It's just sometimes if you're shifting keys around, if you have exposures messed up on your drawings within your rig, sometimes that can get a little bit messy, but it's just a ball. So I've done a drawing substitution here to get rid of this, hidden the shoulders, that's usually mucking around here, and I just created a new drawing here so that it looks like he's bending over. Oh, I saw clean this up so that was looking a little bit tidier. So now I feel like this is another one of those places. Like I said, we could do the squat. So from here, we could have him come back down this way. So he could pull his weight down like this and then try and bring the ball up. If that makes sense. Like this, so he can lift with his legs. Or he can just try and pull the thing up this way bodily. So really messing up his lower back. There's kind of a choice here. Or he can kind of mull it. Let's try and... We'll head this way because I feel like Blue's an irresponsible young man. He's not really concerned about his lumbar situation. So I'm going to bring back my 3/4 pose so that I have my working torso. Make sure I've got everything keyframed in here, hitting F6 at the top. And we just have to bring our ball back. So now we're going to have him bring his body up and we're going to have to counter animate these arms. Because this is going to be, this is a heavy ball. So if you pick something light, it's not going to affect your body in a big way. But when you're lifting something heavy like this, it's really going to affect how your posture is being handled. And we're going to have to make sure to bring this leg above the ball here. I want it to be between his legs. So we can reuse the lower legs here, because I think the bend in those are working, and it's going to be easier to straighten them out a little bit. And then we can figure this out. Because we manipulated the butt a lot, we're going to have to make a decision there. So instead of pulling up like this, I want him to pull back a bit, because now he has this big head, he has this big ball, and he has all of this chest mass, which is being pulled down by gravity. So in order for him to get this stuff up, he has to bring the weight back over his center of gravity. If he literally just takes all of this stuff here and rotates it like this, he's gonna hurt himself right there. He's gonna get a sprain in his back. He's gonna be really upset. He's gonna be like, oh no, my spine, and his spine will pop out of his back. Yeah. So we're gonna bring it back. Bleep. So usually this is the big meat part of your body that weighs a whole lot. So you can think your center of gravity somewhere in here. I like to think around the neck and then bring that down. That's how we maintain balance. But if we have this big thing here and then this big thing here as well as this, now we have a chunk of weight and a chunk of weight. And our center of gravity is going to be somewhere a little bit more out here. So what we need to do is bring all of this stuff back here. So the feet are like where gravity is being held, and we're going to have to get more of a curve to hold all this stuff. All right. So that's what I'm thinking of. The easy way to do it is to bring his pelvis forward and then tilt his upper body back. So that's the simplest way, is to just get your basic curve. Because now we have the meat part here, and we have the ball part here. And then somewhere in the middle here, it's starting to change where things are being held. Because, I mean, even his head is back here. So just by getting that curve, the C curve, it's starting to offset this big weight that he's now holding on to. And you'd also want to take into account your shoulder perspective, things like that. And if he's holding something heavy, his shoulder's going to come down because his body is doing a lot of work. So getting his shoulders down, it feels more like he's holding something heavy. Let me just put this there. You can see that back arm, like I said, has a lot of forgiveness. Right? So no ball, his gravity is back here. And then once he has the ball, he's offsetting it by bringing his shoulders back. And he could even come back a little bit more. The best thing to do is just go and pick up something that's pretty heavy. Find a small child that hopefully you have permission to pick up, or a box of beer. That's another good thing to pick up. And just feel like where your body is actually taking itself to maintain balance. It's all about balance. Now we've got our final position. We can play around with getting from here to there. I'm gonna bring this leg forward, just using my coordinates control points, 0.0001F, and you can see it goes in front of the ball. We're gonna have to bring down the pelvis, and then we can bring down the rest of the body. We've messed up our upper leg here a little bit just by bringing that forward, but that's not a huge deal. That's something that I like to fix once I've got everything else working. Little fiddly bits like that is kind of the last thing I worry about. All right, so he's gonna bring it, boop, boop. He's bringing it back a little too far. His arm is going beyond horizontal. And we'd have to fix these shoulders, obviously. We can, just by getting it this far, without worrying too much about the shoulder problem, we can see how that feels. And it doesn't feel heavy to me. It's just kind of getting picked up. And here it feels a little bit heavier the way he's holding it. And he could even, you could exaggerate this quite a bit so that it feels like he's got something that's a little bit of heft. You can see how he's coming up with his near shoulder much faster than his far shoulder. Oop, oop. That's where these playing around with the perspective really comes into play, makes things look good. I might do some videos on drawing humans in perspective. I think that would be really useful for people. I mean, if you're not, if you are interested in 2D animation, like I don't think there's a way you can get away from drawing. I don't know how you could work around it, like somehow learn perspective without doing any of the drawing. That seems like a less intuitive and less fun way to go about it. And here, I want him to come down even more. I want this to feel very heavy. And remember, breaking up these legs like this, you can get some better foot traction and stuff, but you will lose the ability to get clean in-betweens using the auto-tween system. But I feel like that's a crutch that you should not find yourself depending on. If part of you is thinking like, oh, I could animate this cooler if only it would tween better, I think what you should try and turn that around is just like, what do I have to do to make cool animations? Like, do I need to break the rig? Do I need to make new drawings? And don't be afraid of adding that work. Like, make a plan that you feel like it's going to work, and then just be brave about it. Like, if you make, especially if you're just doing your own stuff at home, you're not like nobody's standing behind you waiting for this to get to the compositing stage or something, then this is a perfect opportunity to just make really big messy mistakes and then go back and find a way to fix it. I've learned so much by fixing my mistakes. I highly recommend making good mistakes. So even here, I'm not feeling it yet. I'm gonna collect my lower body stuff and leave out the feet just because it is a little bit quicker to select things through your network if you're familiar with your rig. I'm gonna bring it back quite a bit. Getting those sleeves a little bit more on the level. It's gonna make it feel still lower. I want this to really feel heavy. So I'm busting this guy up now and just wrecking his torso, but I think if it's going to be a single frame, it's going to work out okay. Gonna work out okay. You can just put some wrinkles in here on a drawing and make it look like he's scrunched up. Maybe have it slow, like a little bit of lag on it there. Yeah, that's okay. So he's bringing it back here. Because this back leg is hidden, like if I move this ball now, this leg is completely shattered. But because it's behind the ball, you could get away with that. We're not worrying about it tweening well because we're just gonna manually set our keyframes. I think this would look even better if it came out like this. So it's coming towards the camera a little bit. Because then it really feels like he's got that ball in there. That might be what was giving us a little bit of weirdness. So if he's got that ball in between his knees, there has to be space for it, right? So I'm going to play it at quarter speed now and see how this plays out. So this is at 6 frames per second. Boop. And it feels a little bit fast, but I feel like the movement is working. It does feel like a little bit like he's pulling up the way here. From here to here, I like that motion. And I like that he's kind of hanging out low. So I'm going to have some slow outs here. Because it's really like, this is between here and here. He's got a lot of work to get this up. So now that I'm pretty happy with these, we'll call these keys. They're key-ish. What I'm going to do is just spread them out along the timeline. I'm going to give him almost half a second to just hold. See you. Yeah, see, if we just auto-tween it, like our butt, our shoulder, and our knees are all going to break. So I don't rely on that much. I might do it just for getting a starting place, but it's not too often that I rely heavily on that to get good, solid movement. So now we're going to get him lifting the thing up. From here to here, I don't feel like it's going to be a ton of keys, but I don't want it to be too fast. And then from here to here is going to be quite a lot. So I'm going to drag this way over here. This is only going to be like a slow out here as well. So let's just grab this. This is not the worst. We can quickly fix this up so it's looking all right. But I'm just going to draw substitutions in. Like I said, I'm not afraid to slap in substitutions when I think they're working. An envelope deformer will also work here, especially if you're doing it on ones and you are going to lean on the tweening system for some of that. Putting in an envelope deformer is going to give you smooth keys, but that's okay. I don't need you. Tidy up those knees. Now he's got a little bit of a hunchback thing happening. The thing is, if you're going to set up your envelope deformer, don't be lazy about it. Really take the time to make sure that your contours are lined up with the contours of these lines. And I like to do it right along the outside seam because that way you have the most control about closing your gaps. I hate when I open up a scene and I've got an envelope deformer. I've got a limb like this, and then I've got an envelope deformer that looks like this on top of it. I'm like, hey, Rigger, why did you bother? Why did you open that if you're just going to make some sloppy garbage? Because that's not useful. But I'm not bitter. A little bitter. There you go. So his back's feeling a little bit squared off. A little bit more like shoulders. So I feel like his torso is getting a little short here, though. So I'm just going to lengthen it and then adjust my bits. There's pretty quick. We could just do a simple slow out there. So just have him start coming forward. So this is playing at 24 frames per second now because I've adjusted the locations of stuff. And I can just play through and see how it's working. Boop, 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 boop. So here, once he gets here, I could even bring it down more. So I could do something like this. Bring his legs way down. The anticipation. So this part here is going to be pretty long. I don't think it'll tween. No, see, because I drew a drawing substitution in the chest. Whoa. The rest of the body works okay. The legs and stuff are working. So if you're at this point and you're like, okay, things aren't too bad here, what I'm going to do is slow out. I'm just going to use my ease on multiple parameters, this guy here. So very tweeny thing to do. Because I feel like it's working all right. This part here could be a little lower torso-wise. And if you've been doing this long enough, I mean, you can look past that crazy chest explosion. And you could see how everything around it is working and see if there's something of value in there that you can work with. And I think all of that is working except for that one thing. So we'll throw a few keys in here. So I'm just looking at the arc here of the ball, because that's really the most important thing here. So, and then it's just a matter of getting this chest, repairing it a little bit. So this is something I do all the time. I don't know if it's necessarily the best workflow idea, but I'm not shy about completely busting something like this and then just repairing it along the way. I think it's fine. So here's where it switches from the not deformer to the deformer. Yeah, I don't think it's beneficial for me to do that. And there's a big jump here. So I'm going to even out this a little bit. So I'm just going to even this out a little bit. So I'm going to bring these two together, these two keys again, so that way I could find something suitable in between the two of them a little bit more easily. So let's see. Let's bring this guy up. I want his chest and arms to drag, because that's where all the weight is. So I really want to push that to the point of being a little bit ridiculous and just say, this is so heavy. This is where all the weight is of this guy is. Can drag his head down quite a lot. So in this movement, I want everything to be going up from here, and then eventually he's going to round out his shoulders, but first he's got to really pull that weight up. So the weight is keeping him down, and then he's going to pull it up by destroying his lower back so badly. If the legs were super important in this movement, something like a run or even riding a bicycle, something like that, I wouldn't bust up the legs like this as much, because you're going to want them to be moving in kind of a rhythmic or a sensible way. But if the movement of the legs is not kind of the main show, then you can get away with busting them up pretty bad, I think, and not hurting yourself in terms of workflow. That's kind of what I was thinking. So if the legs are important for the workflow, it might not behoove you to rip them apart in this manner. But they're not the stars of this show for sure. Hidden joint can be a broken joint, no problem. And of course his face being totally neutral is definitely going to take away from the strain. I feel this back part where he's pulling back here now is too slow. Because it's like, oop, he's settled. And it's not just the hold either. I think I just went back one too far, so I'm just going to get rid of this one. I think this is far enough. And then he can start pulling the weight up. I might have to adjust that next one a little bit. No, that's okay. So here, we'll look at these knees. So they go from straight and then they snap to quite bent. This is something that happens a lot more in 3D animation because you do have those IK legs that work. But just going from stock straight and then snapping, popping your knees and stuff, that's something that can be a bit of an eyesore if you're not careful. So I put a little bit more life into these arms instead of just having the whole thing Barbie doll its way down. So just bending the arm a little bit, having it come down at a different speed, and changing up your hands is certainly going to give more life. I'm just too lazy in these demos to go through and make sure that I have super great hands. But having like an open hand and then a kind of a more careful grabbing hand does add a lot. Whenever you're holding an object, you really want to make sure that you feel like you're grabbing it. Don't just do lazy stock hands like me. The first half's not too bad. Just this part needs to be animated. So here, between here and here, I'm just looking at the butt and trying to figure out what exactly I want from it. So I'll bring my key back so we can figure out some stuff. I like to just sit them right next to each other because then you can see both of them at the same time, or you can just scrub pretty easily. Yeah, so I want it to come back like that. See the lower body? Because before, I think he was just still too low when he was starting to come back around. And then I can get an S-curve out of this pelvis. So here he is here, the pelvis, and then it comes down. And this is what I want to do. I want it to continue coming up and around. Boop, boop. Because then he ends up here. So I'm thinking about the arc that I want my butt to do. Something like this. Instead of either just going back and then up, that's not much of a curve, or going over and then coming this way. Like, this is the stuff I'm trying to avoid. So I feel like this is where the most important weight shift is going to be between the pelvis and the shoulders. That's your main center of mass. So we want those to have some really nice arcs. The arms and stuff, I feel like once you've got your entire thing working well, it's much easier to kind of finicky around with hands and stuff. If you're doing cutout, like the limbs are pretty easy to just shimmy a bit, and even the head. But the main mass, like keeping the things connected and stuff, I feel like that's the most important thing to have working first. And this foot, that's got to get tidied up. Watch it. Shifty shift, shift, shifty shift, shift. That's just doing all kinds of crazy stuff. That's something I'd fix last. So from here to here, he starts, like, he changes the whole pelvic area, which I don't think is a bad thing, because it is going from down, and he's sort of bringing it forward. I think that's necessary. Now I'm just thinking about timing. I want this part here to be a little bit long, so give that lots of time. And then from here to here, I want there to be a final, like, oomph. Ugh. So as I said in some of my other videos, I'm not the type of person who gets the timing right away. I'm more of a, like, work it out as I go person, so I'll shift keys around a lot and just play with the locations of things. And I'll try not to muck around too much with the detail stuff. Like, I'll have some busted up shoulders or some busted knees and hips, but I want to get the overall thing working well. So from here to here, don't think it'll tween. Oh, it tweens pretty okay. That's surprising. That's a happy accident. That's fewer things we have to work on. So we can really slow out. We can get it. I want at least one frame between here and here. There definitely has to be something that's holding that together. But with the slow out here, I feel like that's working pretty good. Ooh. Now I'm thinking about getting over that final hill. Like he's getting that last burst of strength to pull it up over from here to here. So I'm gonna take these legs. I feel like those are closer to my objective. And then I'm gonna work with this body. So this is my starting position. And we're gonna pull everything up. So and the arms will have to counter animate. So make sound effects. I think I talked about that in one of my timing videos. When I'm doing, especially since I work alone, like at my house, so I'll definitely go, yeah, and whatever you got to do to think that stuff through. They might find it a little bit weird in the studio, but if you animate well, then you could get away with being that weirdo that grunts all day in the corner. Working from home makes you a little bit loopy-doopy. You get away with so much weird stuff in your home by yourself. I think that if I went back to the studio nowadays, I'd probably be that weird person saying to myself, maybe I could convince them I'm eccentric if I bought nicer clothes. Right, so I'm looking at the pelvis, getting that final thrust there. I hate when if you connect a bunch of things and you have your light table on, sometimes you get these weird artifacts if you're using deformed drawings, or you can see that like some of my cutters and stuff explode when I'm using the onion skin. That's a little bit of a nuisance that Harmony has, but it's not a deal breaker, I guess. Like if you are animating and all of a sudden your deformers explode like that, here the neck is completely popping out, before you panic, test it, turn off your onion skin and see if it's just an artifact. I don't know how many times I've gone in and tried to fix an artifact that was not actually a problem. Silly onion skin tricking me. And the foot's still doing that twitchy thing, but that's not a big deal. The last thing I would do is it goes right into this pose and dead stop, snap. So we just need to settle this a little bit. As always with animation, we have a million different possibilities. We could have his shoulders stay forward a little bit. So in the pose before this one, between here and here, his body could come up first, but his shoulders could remain kind of forward before pulling back. Or he could lift it up a little bit higher like this and then settle down into the shoulder pose. I think up and over might be a little bit might be good. Let's see if we can pull that off. I think this one's going to be the best one to work with. There we go. A little bit of shoulder roll there. And then I'm just going to do one more pose that's a little bit more settled. So I'm just going to bring everything down just a little bit into a more comfortable, just kind of settling into it. I don't want him to feel loose or relaxed because he is carrying this big thing, but I do want him to feel like he's balanced and equal. It's almost just like a breath out. See, just from there to there. And I'm just going to ease out of that so you can barely see the end of it, and just give it like a few settle frames like that. Whoop, whoop. Yeah, so that's not too bad. I feel like this part here where he's struggling to pick it up, there could even go slower. And adding in facial expressions is going to give a ton. So right now he looks completely neutral. Let's sneak down and just blow out all the keys on our face. That way we're not fighting previous keys. It's gonna fall through. I'm gonna throw in some quick deformers on his eyebrows. And this is why learning rigging is going to improve your workflow, because if you don't have a deformer and you suddenly want a deformer, then you're going to be able to slap them in really fast. He's that big. So throwing in a little bit of facial expression makes it look a little tougher. And this, I always throw that in super last, because facial expressions, even if the shot is all about the face, I won't put a ton of time into getting each expression and eye blink or anything like that until the very end. Once I have the hand gestures and the head gestures and everything working, I might throw in some temp ones, but I'll usually do very little work on mucking around with eyebrows and stuff until everything else is done. Because if it's working without the face, then once you throw the face in, it looks even better. But if it's not working without the face, it's never going to work, no matter how much face you put in there. This is a great little exercise even just for doodling. Just give the guy a weight and then think about how much curve he's going to need to carry it. Because the heavier it is, you might need to really pull back like this. And you have to, walking with something like this, walking with a heavy bag, that's a great exercise to do. Or even just trying to think about where the weight would be distributed, stuff like that. Great little exercise. So hopefully that was educational or at least entertaining, one of those things. I'm gonna go because I've been at this like a million years. I don't know how you guys feel about long videos. Who knows? I don't know what I'm doing. I have no plan. But thanks for dropping by. Like, share, subscribe, all those things internet people ask you to do. And I will see you in the next video.